Hey everyone, welcome back to English Vibes.
Hi, we're so happy you're here today.
I'm John.
And I'm Maya. We're here to help you practice speaking English naturally.
If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to hit subscribe and give us a thumbs up.
Yes, please. It really helps us. So today, we're talking about life stages and milestones.
That's right. We'll teach you how to talk about different periods of life, major life events, and important moments that shape who we are.
This is such a meaningful topic because everyone goes through different stages in life, from childhood to old age.
Exactly. So let's get started. Maya, what does life stages mean?
Life stages are the different periods we go through as we grow and age, like infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and old age.
And what about milestones?
Milestones are significant events or achievements in a person's life, like graduating, getting married, or buying your first house.
Perfect definitions. So let's start from the very beginning. How do we talk about infancy and early childhood?
You might say, when I was a baby, I was very quiet. Or as an infant, I had a lot of health issues.
For early childhood, ages 2 to 5, you could say, when I was a toddler, I loved playing outside.
What's a toddler?
A toddler is a young child who is just learning to walk, usually between ages 1 and 3.
You might talk about early milestones. I took my first steps when I was 13 months old, or I said my first word at age 1.
Parents love to remember these moments. You could say, my parents say I was walking by my first birthday.
Or, according to my mom, I was a very curious child.
Now let's talk about childhood, roughly ages 6 to 12. How do people describe this stage?
You might say, my childhood was really happy, or I had a difficult childhood.
You could describe memories. When I was in elementary school, I loved recess. Or, as a kid, I spent every summer at my grandparents' house.
What's recess?
Recess is the break time during school when kids go outside to play.
You might talk about childhood milestones. I learned to ride a bike when I was 7, or I lost my first tooth in kindergarten.
Or, I made my best friend in 3rd grade. Or, I joined the soccer team when I was 8.
These are formative experiences. What does formative mean?
Formative means something that has a strong influence on how you develop as a person. Formative experiences shape who you become.
Now, let's discuss young adulthood, roughly ages 18 to 30. This is a big transition period.
You might say, in my early 20s, I was still figuring things out. Or, my 20s were all about exploring and learning.
Major milestones in this stage: I went to college right after high school, or I moved out of my parents' house at 19.
Or, I graduated from university at 22. Or, I got my first real job at 23.
You could say, I traveled abroad for the first time in my mid-20s, or I met my spouse when I was 25. What's a spouse?
A spouse is your husband or wife, your marriage partner.
Other common experiences: I paid off my student loans in my late 20s, or I changed careers at 28.
This stage is often about establishing independence. What does that mean?
Establishing independence means becoming self-sufficient and making your own decisions, not relying on your parents anymore.
You might say, moving out was my first step towards independence, or I became financially independent at 24.
Now let's discuss middle adulthood, roughly ages 30 to 50. What characterizes this stage?
This is often when people are building careers and families. You might say, in my 30s, I focused on my career, or my 40s have been about balance.
Common milestones: I got married at 32, or we bought our first house when I was 35.
Or I had my first child at 30, or I got promoted to manager at 38.
You could say, I changed careers in my mid-30s, or I went back to school at 40.
Some people experience what's called a midlife crisis. Do you know what that is?
Yes, a midlife crisis is when people in their 40s or 50s feel anxious about getting older and might make big, sudden changes in their life.
Exactly. Someone might say, I bought a sports car during my midlife crisis, or I quit my job and traveled the world at 45.
Not everyone has a midlife crisis, but it's a common expression. What about later adulthood, ages 50 to 65?
This stage is often about reflection and preparation for retirement. You might say, in my 50s, I'm thinking about the next chapter, or I'm approaching retirement age.
Common experiences. My kids graduated college in my 50s, or I became a grandparent at 52.
Or, I paid off my mortgage at 55. Or, I'm planning for retirement at 60.
You could say, my children have their own families now, or I have more time for hobbies in this stage of life.
What about senior years or old age, typically 65 and beyond?
You might say, in my golden years, I want to travel, or as a senior citizen, I have more free time.
What are golden years?
Golden years is a positive term for the time after retirement when people can enjoy life without working.
Common milestones? I retired at 65, or I celebrated my 50th wedding anniversary at 72.
Or I moved to a retirement community at 70, or I became a great-grandparent at 75.
You might say, I'm enjoying my retirement, or in my later years, I've become more reflective.
What does reflective mean?
Reflective means thinking deeply about your life, your experiences, and what they mean, often looking back and contemplating.
Now let's talk about major life milestones that can happen at different ages. Let's start with education milestones.
I started preschool at age 4, or I graduated from kindergarten at 6.
I finished elementary school at 11, or I graduated from middle school at 14.
I got my high school diploma at 18, or I earned my bachelor's degree at 22.
I completed my master's degree at 25, or I received my PhD at 30.
These education milestones mark important transitions. What about career milestones?
I got my first part-time job at 16, or I landed my first full-time job at 22.
I received my first promotion at 27, or I became a manager at 30.
I started my own business at 35, or I reached the executive level at 45.
I achieved financial stability at 40, or I retired from my career at 65.
Now let's discuss relationship milestones. These are really important to many people.
I went on my first date at 16, or I had my first serious relationship at 19.
I met the love of my life at 24, or I got engaged at 26.
We got married at 28, or we celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Some people might say, I got divorced at 35, or I remarried at 40.
Life doesn't always go as planned. What about milestones for people who don't get married?
You could say, I'm happily single and focused on my career, or I have a long-term partner, but we're not married.
Or, I'm committed to my partner without marriage. Or, I've chosen not to marry and I'm happy with that decision.
Everyone's path is different. Now let's talk about family milestones.
I became a parent for the first time at 30, or we had our first child at 28.
Our family grew when we had twins at 32, or I adopted a child at 35.
My oldest started school at 5, or my daughter graduated high school when I was 48.
I became an empty nester at 50. What does that mean?
An empty nester is a parent whose children have grown up and moved out of the family home. The nest is empty.
I became a grandparent at 52, or I'm a great-grandparent at 75.
Now let's discuss housing milestones. These are significant financial and personal achievements.
I moved into my first apartment at 20, or I got my first place at 22.
I bought my first house at 30, or we moved to a bigger home at 35.
We renovated our house at 45, or we downsized to a smaller place at 60.
What does downsize mean?
Downsize means moving to a smaller, usually less expensive home. Often people do this when kids move out or after retirement.
I paid off my mortgage at 55, or I moved into a retirement community at 70.
Now let's talk about personal achievement milestones that happen at various ages.
I learned to drive at 16, or I traveled abroad alone for the first time at 20.
I ran my first marathon at 28, or I published my first book at 40.
I learned the new language at 35, or I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro at 45.
I started painting at 60, or I earned my pilot's license at 55.
These show that personal growth can happen at any age. What about health milestones, both positive and challenging?
Positive ones, I completed a fitness challenge at 30, or I've maintained a healthy weight for 10 years.
Challenging ones, I was diagnosed with diabetes at 40, or I had surgery at 50.
I beat cancer at 45, or I recovered from a serious accident at 35.
These health experiences can be life changing events. Now let's discuss how to talk about transitions between life stages.
You might say, I'm transitioning from college life to the working world, or I'm in between jobs right now.
Or, I'm at a crossroads in my life. What does that mean?
A crossroads is a point where you need to make an important decision about which direction to take in life.
You could say, I'm entering a new phase of life, or I'm going through a transition period.
I'm adjusting to being a parent, or I'm adapting to retirement.
These transitions can be exciting, but also challenging. How do people talk about looking back on their life?
You might say, looking back, my 20s were the best years, or in retrospect, I would have made different choices.
What does in retrospect mean?
In retrospect means when looking back at the past, often with more wisdom or understanding than you had at the time.
You could say, if I could do it over, I would, or my biggest regret is not taking more risks when I was younger.
Or positively, I'm proud of what I've accomplished, or I have no regrets about my life choices.
Now let's talk about cultural differences in life stages and milestones. Do these vary by culture?
Absolutely. In some cultures, people get married younger. You might say, in my culture, it's common to marry in your early 20s.
Or, in my country, people often live with their parents until marriage.
In my culture, big family celebrations mark important milestones, or where I'm from, retirement age is different.
These cultural contexts matter. What about modern changes to traditional life stages?
You might say, people are getting married later now, or many people in my generation are delaying parenthood.
Or the traditional life path is changing, or young adults today face different challenges than previous generations.
I'm part of the boomer generation, or as a millennial, I experienced.
What are these generation terms?
Baby boomers were born roughly 1946 to 1964. Generation X is 1965 to 1980. Millennials are 1981 to 1996. Gen Z is 1997 to 2012.
Each generation has different experiences and milestones. How do people talk about bucket list milestones?
You might say, before I turn 50, I want to visit all 7 continents, or it's on my bucket list to learn to fly a plane.
I accomplished the bucket list item when I swam with dolphins, or running a marathon was always a goal of mine.
These are personal milestones that matter to each individual. Now let's discuss how to congratulate someone on reaching a milestone.
You might say, congratulations on your graduation, or I'm so proud of you for buying your first house.
Or, what an amazing achievement. Or, you should be so proud of yourself.
You've come so far, or this is such a big moment for you.
How do you respond to congratulations?
You could say, thank you so much, or I couldn't have done it without support from others.
Or, it's been a long journey, but worth it. Or, I'm excited for this next chapter.
Now let's talk about commemorating milestones. How do people celebrate or remember important moments?
You might say, we're throwing a party to celebrate, or we're having a small gathering for the occasion.
I'm taking a trip to mark this milestone, or we're doing something special to commemorate the day.
What does commemorate mean?
Commemorate means to do something to remember and honor an important event or person.
We took a family photo to remember this moment, or I'm keeping a journal to document this stage of life.
These help preserve memories. What about when milestones are delayed or don't happen as expected?
You might say, I graduated later than my peers, or I took a non-traditional path.
Or, I'm achieving these milestones in my own time. Or, everyone's timeline is different.
I didn't follow the traditional life script, and that's okay. Or, my journey looks different from others, but it's mine.
That's an important message. There's no one right way to live life.
Absolutely. Okay, we've covered so much. Let's do our vocabulary review.
Yes, let's explain all the important words about life stages and milestones.
First word, milestone. A milestone is a significant event or stage in a person's life or development.
Examples include graduation, marriage, having children, or buying a house.
Getting my driver's license was an important milestone.
Next word, stage. A life stage is a period or phase in someone's life, like childhood or adulthood.
Each stage has different characteristics and challenges.
I'm in the stage of life where I'm focused on my career.
Next, transition. A transition is the process of changing from one state or condition to another.
The transition from student to professional was challenging.
Transitions can be difficult, but also exciting.
Let's explain adolescence. Adolescence is the period of development between childhood and adulthood, the teenage years.
Roughly ages 13 to 19, when young people are becoming adults.
During adolescence, I struggled with my identity.
Next word, adulthood. Adulthood is the state or condition of being fully grown or developed, being an adult.
It usually begins around age 18, though true maturity takes longer.
Adulthood came with more responsibilities than I expected.
Next, retirement. Retirement is when someone stops working, usually because they've reached a certain age.
Most people retire in their 60s, though it varies.
My parents are enjoying their retirement traveling the world.
Let's explain generation. A generation is all the people born and living at about the same time, usually spanning about 20 to 30 years.
Different generations have different experiences and perspectives.
My generation grew up with technology.
Next word, achievement. An achievement is something accomplished successfully, especially through effort or skill.
Milestones are often achievements we're proud of.
Graduating college was my biggest achievement so far.
Next, independence. Independence is the state of being self-sufficient and not relying on others.
Young adults often strive for independence from their parents.
Moving into my own apartment gave me independence.
Last word, reflect. To reflect means to think deeply or carefully about something, often looking back on experiences.
As we age, we often reflect on our life choices and experiences.
I like to reflect on my accomplishments at the end of each year.
So we learned milestone, stage, transition, adolescence, adulthood, retirement, generation, achievement, independence, and reflect.
These are 10 essential words for talking about life stages and important moments.
With these words and phrases, you can discuss any stage of life or significant event.
Everyone's journey is unique, and now you can express yours in English.
Now it's your turn. We have a question for you.
Write in the comments, what's the most important milestone in your life so far?
Was it graduation, getting a job, meeting someone special, moving to a new place?
Tell us in the comments. We love hearing your stories.
And remember, everyone's milestones are different. There's no right or wrong timeline.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.
And turn on notifications so you never miss a video.
Keep practicing your English every day. You're doing amazing.
Celebrate your achievements, big and small.
See you in the next video.
Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy every stage of your journey. Quick vocabulary review. 1. Milestone. Significant event or stage in life. 2. Stage. A period or phase in someone's life. 3. Transition. Process of changing from one state to another. 4. Adolescence. Period between childhood and adulthood. 5. Adulthood. State of being fully grown or developed. 6. Retirement. Stopping work, usually at a certain age. 7. Generation. People born and living at about the same time. 8. Achievement. Something accomplished successfully. 9. Independence. Being self-sufficient, not relying on others. 10. Reflect. Think deeply about experiences or choices. Celebrate every stage of life. You're doing great!